Welcome back to the Missing 411 podcast, where we dive deep into the most complex and utterly unsettling missing person cases. These are the ones that truly defy any rational explanation, leaving behind only shadows and haunting questions. This week, we're peeling back the layers on two extremely intriguing incidents. We have a case from the remote, high-altitude wilderness of British Columbia and another from the American heartland, dating all the way back to the Great Depression. Both incidents are perfect, chilling examples of cases that fall squarely into the established Missing 411 research parameters. They share an inexplicable finality. First, a quick note on our recent project, the documentary Missing 411, the UFO Connection. It has been driving incredible global discussion and remains the #1 documentary in the world on iTunes for the third week running. This is huge, considering the hundreds of films listed there. We are truly grateful for the community's support. The feedback we receive is consistent and telling. The film is so packed with information and unnerving correlations that many viewers feel compelled to watch it a second time just to process it all. It forces you to look at the Missing 411 phenomenon, this recurring pattern of unexplained vanishings, through a completely new and truly unsettling lens. The fundamental, core question driving all our work here is this: why do seemingly normal, often highly skilled people vanish completely in specific geographic clusters? Why do certain demographics or circumstances, like the sudden onset of inclement weather, show up again and again in these reports? It quickly becomes a rabbit hole of staggering, complex implications. Before we jump into the featured cases, a brief mention for our dedicated community members. The Alaska Bigfoot Cruise is scheduled for this September, providing a unique opportunity to discuss the phenomenon in a remote setting. Also, mark your calendars for January 12th for a special in-person screening of our film in Golden, Colorado. These live events are always memorable, not just for the film itself, but because the questions asked by the audience afterward consistently reveal how many people have personally experienced aspects of the Missing 411 mystery. It shows just how widespread, and yet how actively ignored, this phenomenon truly is. Now, let's transition into the letters. We receive dozens of messages every week, and many of them provide vital, critical context for understanding the Missing 411 mystery. The following two letters, in particular, speak directly to the dangers we highlight. Our first letter comes from a listener who had been a devoted solo hiker in Yosemite and later moved to the Metro Phoenix area, where he continues to explore the trails. He writes about the deep realization that hiking, while good for the soul, requires an awareness of the very real, documented dangers we discuss. His point is absolutely crucial for everyone listening. If you are a hiker, a hunter, or a fisherman, you are now armed with information about the specific Missing 411 clusters. This knowledge means you must take precautions that search and rescue agencies constantly advocate for, precautions that go beyond simple planning. Specifically, we implore you to carry a Personal Locator Beacon, a PLB. They cost around $300, are easily accessible, and have been directly credited with saving thousands of lives in difficult conditions. If you know someone who ventures into the wild, a PLB is truly the most vital gift you can give them. Interestingly, this listener mentions that his primary hiking grounds are in the famed Red Rock country of Sedona and the San Francisco Peaks. As many of you know, some of the most unusual disappearances have happened around Sedona, areas we believe are tied to concentrated, often unseen energy fields that may facilitate the strange disappearances unique to the Missing 411 pattern. Our next letter is a truly remarkable piece of testimony from Jose, currently living in Germany. He details witnessing multiple unexplained aerial objects as a young man in Bogota, Colombia, an experience that led him to investigate Native American and, later, the ancient Vedic traditions for nearly 30 years. Jose's account is a stunning, independent confirmation of the research presented in the UFO Connection. He writes that what the indigenous tribes told him is exactly what he later found in the Vedas, that the universe is far more complex than we perceive, inhabited by beings existing across 7 dimensions. He specifically mentions the existence of entities known as the Asuras and the Rakshasas, beings described as highly intelligent, yet often malevolent and capable of inhabiting jungles and forests. They are described as shapeshifters that can paralyze their prey and are one of the forces that may view us as mere resources to be harvested. Jose closes by asserting that the knowledge surrounding these disappearances, UFOs, cryptids, and the nature of consciousness, is all documented within these ancient texts. This suggests the link between the missing 411 cluster cases and some form of ancient, non-rational supernatural entity is a documented historical fact, not a new theory. Finally, a quick letter from a retired sergeant with 25 years of law enforcement experience in Northern California. He recently wrote to us about an odd experience he had while on a walk in Washington state. His head, as he says, is always on a swivel, but this event was inexplicable. He experienced a momentary, highly localized, and very bright light that appeared in front of him twice. It seemed to come from a source behind and above him, yet there was thick overcast and absolutely nothing visible in the sky or behind him when he checked. It was a bizarre, confined flash of energy, completely devoid of explanation. While an isolated incident, this random, brief, and unexplained burst of light fits the pattern of non-rational, fleeting energy events sometimes reported in missing 411 areas. It suggests that whatever is responsible for these vanishings has the ability to manipulate the local environment in strange ways, perhaps opening brief, shimmering portals. Now we move to our first featured case, from the deep forests of British Columbia, Canada. This region, near the Washington and Idaho borders, is a verifiable hotbed for unusual reports, including UFOs, intense Bigfoot sightings, and classic missing 411 cluster disappearances. This is the case of Gordon Sagoo, a 50-year-old man who vanished on August 14, 2016. Gordon was truly an inspirational figure, having successfully transformed his life from being severely overweight into an experienced trail runner and fitness coach. He was in peak physical condition both mentally and physically. Gordon was hiking with two friends near Baby Mundy Peak. He decided to walk ahead on the same trail just to scout the area. His friends watched him go, believing they would meet up with him at the car parked at the trailhead. He had his cell phone and plenty of water. The friends arrived back at the car. Gordon never did. They waited, then called authorities. The search that ensued was massive. For different search and rescue teams, the RCMP and multiple teams of specialized search dogs were deployed, covering the area in detail. They searched for 7 full days. The family even hired private teams and paid for further searches. The result? Absolutely nothing. Not a single piece of evidence. Not a water bottle. Not one item belonging to Gordon Sagoo has ever been recovered. This is a classic missing 411 pattern. An experienced person vanishes completely from a known point of separation, with no debris, no struggle, and no trackable scent for the dogs. The failure of those canine teams, which can smell a body miles away, is the most profound failure of all. Given the high UFO and cryptid activity in this Canadian region, we must ask, did Gordon stumble upon an entity, perhaps a creature like the Rakshasas described by Jose, capable of instantaneous removal? 6 years later, the silence is deafening, and the mystery of Gordon Sagoo remains completely unsolvable. Now we travel back in time to 1932 Ohio for a chilling historical missing 411 case that remains one of Cleveland's greatest mysteries. This is the case of 8-year-old Ebert Holleran, who disappeared on October 22nd. Ebert was a normal boy who had made the short trip from his friend's house many times. He was last seen entering Washington Park, taking his usual shortcut home before dark. He was a stone's throw from his house, yet he was never seen walking out of that park. The police and community response was immediate and overwhelming. They feared everything from abduction to a fall into the Cuyahoga River. 500 Boy Scouts of Ohio were mobilized, meticulously scouring the park in grid patterns for 3 days straight. They had adults, they had canines, and the Coast Guard even patrolled the nearby waterways. This was a search that was methodical, comprehensive, and exhaustive, even by modern standards. There was simply no way a small child could have been missed. 8 days after the search began, the police were forced to make a shocking statement, publicly admitting that the boy might have disappeared into thin air. To have a police department make such a declaration is a powerful indicator that the case had already moved beyond rational possibility. Then, for months later, On February 20th, 1933, Ebert's body was finally found. Two men walking their hunting dogs stumbled upon his remains in a ravine inside Washington Park, only seeing his arm protruding from the leaves. Here is the unassailable missing 411 anomaly. The body was found in the exact same ravine that had been searched, repeatedly and methodically, by those 500 Boy Scouts, along with police and canine teams. It is a documented fact of the case. We are forced to conclude that either the body was not physically present during the initial search, or that some force actively shielded it, preventing the hundreds of searchers and the dogs from finding it. It's almost as if the location itself had rejected the search efforts. The official conclusion of the case is what makes it truly unbelievable. The coroner performed an autopsy, finding no violence or struggle. Days later, he made a public statement that is almost unheard of in medical history. Ebert Holleran died of fright. Think about the implication. Something so terrifying, so deeply shocking, happened to this young boy that it induced instantaneous death, yet left no physical, trackable evidence of violence on the body. This is a classic symptom of extreme psychological trauma seen in other unexplained missing 411 deaths. Ebert's case perfectly illustrates the illogical, intractable nature of the missing 411 phenomenon, echoing the same patterns we see today: a massive search failure and a non-traditional cause of death. It forces us to acknowledge that some outside, unknown force is at play. We've covered two cases today: Gordon Sagoo in the remote Canadian wilderness, and Ebert Holleran in a city park in 1932. Both disappearances and subsequent findings are illogical and fit the established missing 411 cluster criteria perfectly. The common thread remains the complete failure of human and canine search methods, and the non-traditional circumstances surrounding the body's eventual appearance. This suggests the involvement of an entity that can manipulate time, space, or perception. We here at the Missing 411 podcast continue to meticulously collect this data and present these facts to you. The more people who are aware of the missing 411 phenomenon, the closer we get to understanding why these disappearances continue to occur. If you haven't yet seen our latest film, Missing 411, The UFO Connection, you can rent it now. I can almost guarantee you'll want to watch it twice, as it brings the many disparate pieces of this puzzle together like never before. Finally, a closing reminder. Please subscribe to the channel. It is the single best way to help us continue this vital, difficult research. And please, if you have a loved one who spends time in the wilderness, be proactive. Get them a personal locator beacon. Stay safe, and we will be back with more critical cases next time.